Hello, everyone. My name is Isabella Marasco, and I'm hosting this session today, speaking on behalf of Learn Energy. At Learn Energy, our goal is to empower a new generation with firsthand information and resources to fight the climate crisis. Today, we plan to do this by connecting you all with two guest speakers who are actively working in Alberta today to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In 2021, the Government of Canada legislated the commitment to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by the year 2050. The quest for net zero emissions is a worldwide goal. I am sure that so many of you have thoughts and feelings about this. However, I can speak to the fact that one of the hardest things about being young and aware of these issues is that so often we are left feeling powerless. Learn Energy is hoping that with this presentation today, we can help begin to bridge the gap between those who are currently pioneering emissions reductions and the new generation. We are the people these issues are presumably going to affect most directly. Our speakers have a lot to share with you, and we hope that you're able to see these next 40 minutes as a chance not only to engage with leading edge technologies and innovators, but also a chance to maybe think about your future and your own potential to make impactful choices, whatever that may look like for you. We are here because we believe in your potential. We ask that you please keep your mics and cameras off and direct any questions to me in the chat. Feel free to ask anything on your mind, and we'll do our best to answer them at the end of our speaker sessions. Our first speaker is Isabella Tarasco. Isabella Tarasco is the Manager of Strategic Initiatives and Programs for Emissions Reductions Alberta, or ERA. She supports the development and planning for ERA's future calls for proposals, drafting strategic documents such as the Rolling Three-Year Business Plan, Annual Report, and Technology Roadmap. She also oversees various aspects of ERA's performance management strategy. Before joining ERA, Isabella Tarasco worked with both the provincial and federal governments in the areas of innovation policy, climate strategy, and intergovernmental and Indigenous relations. Isabella has a Master of Science in Sustainable Energy Development, a Bachelor of Science in Biological Science, and a Bachelor of Arts in Italian Studies from the University of Calgary. Now, she is currently enrolled in the Master of Business Administration program at McMaster University's De Groot School of Business. Welcome, Isabella.
Thanks, Isabella, for sharing that introduction there. I'm just going to share my screen here with you. Let me see here. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Wonderful. So thanks again for coming, everyone, and for hearing a little bit about ERA. And so, as our name suggests, we are Alberta-based. My colleagues work in Calgary, Edmonton, and Banff, which means I get to collaborate and connect with innovators and entrepreneurs from all four corners of the province, but across the country and internationally as well. Before I get into too much about who we are, I'd love to get you all thinking about the purpose of this Quest for Net Zero initiative. So you may have been introduced to net zero as net zero emissions reductions or net zero carbon emissions reductions. And you have likely also been told that if we produce a certain amount of emissions, we have to remove that same amount for the term net zero to hold true. Now, you're all familiar with the concept of a car or truck. And when you get in your car, unless you own a hybrid or electric car, your car will produce emissions. Now, if you drive from one place to the other, you can't just drive in reverse to get rid of those emissions. So you'll have to find a way to somehow remove the emissions that you produce from driving that car. So what does this mean in the grand scheme of things? And what does net zero look like to you or I? Does it mean that all homes will now include their own renewable energy source by, for example, putting solar panels on their roof? What about eliminating the emissions produced from the transport of our fruit and vegetables that often come from places outside of Alberta and outside of Canada? Does this mean that we all have our own greenhouses? And does this mean that we put solar on our greenhouses so that we don't have to heat them using conventional sources? And what about all of those tree planting initiatives? Should we use drones to do that? Well, this is exactly what Flash Forest, a company that ERA is currently funding, is doing.
So I started this company to have a large impact on carbon emissions. We wanted to just pull as much carbon out of the atmosphere as possible, and this is the most scalable and fastest way that I can think of doing it. Our goal is to plant 1 billion trees by 2028, and we're going to do it. My name is Bryce Jones. I'm CEO here at Flash Forest, and we're Canada's first-to-market drone reforestation company. So wildfires are increasing in Canada, and in Fort McMurray there was a huge wildfire recently, and there's quite a few actually just in the area in this boreal environment that have had wildfires. So one issue with this is that tree planters actually can't go in many of these sites. It's just too dangerous. You know, there's slopes, there's slash, there's cliffs, there's snags sticking out, and I think the real only way that I can think of to scale this up is through the air. And drone technology is here now, and we can use this. We can use this to our advantage.
Traditionally, tree planting has been a labor-intensive process, but by taking to the skies, Flash Forest aims to make reforestation more efficient and to gain access to difficult-to-reach and dangerous environments, such as the post-wildfire areas around Fort McMurray. The key is in the biological seed pod technology. Pods can either be dropped from above the canopy or fired from near the forest floor. Once activated by moisture, the pod expands to create an ideal cavity for the tree to germinate and grow.
So ERA is allowing us to test our technology in northern Alberta. This is the boreal forest, and this is a biome that scales across Canada. It's the largest biome on Earth. It's a particularly difficult biome. The winters are harsh, the growing seasons are shorter, and so what works here will also work in Ontario, will work in Saskatchewan, across the country. ERA is committing $1.8 million over 3 years to this project. With this funding, we're going to be able to really ramp up our automation equipment and get closer to 100,000 and then eventually 500,000 pods a day.
And the answer to our initial question, do we reach net zero with these types of technologies? And the answer is yes, to all of these solutions and more. So at ERA, we always rely on the power of and. It's not an either or solution. It's what have we done in the past? What are we doing now? And what's next? And so part of what ERA does and what we've been doing since we were created in 2009 is investing in technologies that you see and some that you don't see, but are equally as important in reducing emissions and helping industries within Alberta reach net zero. So since 2009, we've invested over $820 million to 231 projects, and combined, these projects are worth nearly $6.5 billion. So how do we decide where to invest or who to invest in? You know, there's thousands of companies, millions of technologies, and that's the fun part. We select projects through competitions. And how do we determine what types of competitions will get us the projects that we need to reach net zero? That's a big part of what I do as well. We choose the competitions based on where we think the best opportunities are. So at ERA, we know that the quest for net zero won't happen through just one technology or one company. It's going to take a lot of solutions and a lot of ideas to get us there. And when we think about net zero, we know we don't have all the answers, which is why we talk to industries, including oil and gas, agriculture, petrochemical, who are working every day to reduce emissions across their operations. We talk to governments, Government of Alberta, for example, who provides us with the funding for all of these great projects. We talk to post-secondary institutions like universities and technical institutes, and other funding agencies like Alberta Innovates, who also fund innovative technologies and projects to make sure that we're all working towards the same outcome. So the fraction of funding that ERA receives is only a small amount that industries need to implement some of these technologies. And why? Well, innovation is expensive and it needs a number of things to ensure its success. Innovation is risky and it brings a number of technological challenges when you want to try and bring in a new technology into your operations. And so one of our jobs is to provide the funding to help de-risk some of these technologies and to prove that they work on a larger scale and can be safely and reliably brought into these operations. So one of the industries working to reduce their emissions is the cement industry. So as you all know, making cement, the main ingredient in concrete, is one of the most energy intensive processes in the world. It's a product that we see everywhere in our homes, roads, hospitals, and schools. In 2013, Carbon Cure Technologies was an eager startup growing in other areas of Canada, but had no operations in Alberta. With support from us and the government of Alberta, they're now capturing carbon from cement production and reusing it at 4 concrete plants in Alberta and over 300 worldwide. So the urgency to meet net zero is there. Given all we know about how long it takes to de-risk some of these technologies, we also need to make sure these technologies are used on a larger scale. So before we open it up to questions and we pass it on to our next amazing presenter, I want to leave you with a thought. Now, there's no clear path to net zero. It's not obvious. It's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to be a collective effort. And I'm sure you've all been asked what you want to do when you grow up, what kind of lifestyle you want, how many sneakers you want to own, what kind of car you want, and the list goes on. But I challenge you instead to think about what kind of impact you want to make, and what type of organization do you want to work for, and what are your strengths and how can you apply them. Knowing that you can learn something from every job that you work at. So my first job was at a Foot Locker, followed by an optometrist's office. And that's where I learned to talk to people and to listen to what they're looking for and help meet their needs. My first job out of university was at Statistics Canada, working at the census. And it didn't sound like much at first, but it was one of the most challenging and rewarding experiences I've ever had, because I got to work with Southern Alberta Indigenous communities. So if you're interested in getting involved, and I suggest you start now, don't be discouraged if the first job you land isn't directly related to what you want to do, or isn't saving the world as everyone wants to do. Always keep learning, always ask questions, and don't underestimate the power of "and", because it's how we need to think about the future. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you so much, Isabella, for that presentation. It is so fascinating to see what's going on here in Alberta with emissions reduction. I would love to ask you a few questions, if you don't mind. The first of which is just regarding what is the most rewarding part of your job for you, would you say?
I would say that it's getting to learn how to do different things. And so part of my job is working on our business plan. And that means that we have to talk to a bunch of different people, a lot of different governments, a lot of different stakeholders like innovators, companies like Madison's, to ask, what are you doing in your industry to help decarbonize, and what's the next best thing? And, how can ERA support that? And by understanding what's coming next, we can plan as an organization to support some of these opportunities with our funding competitions. And so we try and launch 2 funding competitions per year. And those are really exciting because sometimes they are open to a lot of sectors, so multi-sectoral. Sometimes they're just targeted at sectors like our food farming forestry competition, for example, where one of the companies that we funded is called Synergraze, and they're actually helping to develop a feed additive that's capable of reducing methane emissions from cattle by up to 90%. So substantial when you consider that direct emissions from global livestock is nearly 15% of total greenhouse gas emissions. And so it's really just understanding that there's a lot happening in a lot of different industries, and people like Madison and the smart people that lead all of these great companies are really working towards reducing our emissions and finding new and innovative ways to do things. And it's great because we get to provide the funding that helps them do that, and helps them bring in some of their technologies into market to things that you will hopefully see.
Okay, thank you. That is very valuable advice. My second question is, what advice would you have for young people who are maybe experiencing a sense of climate fatigue or just dread and feel like maybe they don't understand the point of even trying to fight anymore?
I would say, I don't want to say that that's fine, but I would just say, figure out what you are interested in, because climate touches a lot of different sectors. And so if you're interested in finance, for example, there are ways that climate touches finance. For example, some of the climate reporting, environmental, sustainable, and environmental, social, and governance reporting. So ESG reporting. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that, but that is what happens in a lot of the finance sector. I would just say, how do you want to contribute to a better world? Whether that's through finance, whether it's through climate, whether it's through a bunch of different initiatives. Climate fatigue is real. I think we hear about it all the time, if not every day on the news. I think what's important is to move past all the noise and really understand what it means for you. And does that mean, your job prospects in the next 5 to 10 years might change? Does it mean a certain industry that you want to go into is changing its operations? And so you'll have to learn how to do, artificial intelligence and bring that into your industry, or there's a whole bunch of different opportunities out there. And I would just say to focus on what is most interesting to you. Kind of a long-winded answer.
My next question for you is regarding how you found your path out of high school. Was this always the industry you wanted to work in, or was it something that changed and morphed over time?
I would say it changes and morphs over time. And so I never had a clear path about what I wanted to do. And I still don't. And I think, just thinking really about the opportunities that are in front of you. If something doesn't feel right, if a job doesn't feel right, look for another one. As I mentioned, I worked at Foot Locker and at optometrist's office. And obviously, when I first got into biosci at the university, I wanted to be a doctor like everyone else. But I soon realized that I was interested in other things. I was actually interested in plant biology and in biology of fungi and in invertebrate biology and zoology. And so explore those different things that you're interested in, but also understand that there has to be some sort of connection to a job in the future. And what I wish somebody would have told me when I was in school is, here are certain jobs that are promising, and here is what they do. And here are some other jobs which maybe you may not have heard of, but are still really equally as significant. So my advice would be just to talk to people. Most people are always willing to talk to you about your interests and about the different jobs that are out there and what they do. And I would just say, take something from every job, whether you're washing floors or whether you're a CEO.
Okay, Isabella, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your presentation and the questions. And now we are going to go invite Madison to take the floor. All right. Madison Savilo is the Chief of Staff at Carbon Upcycling Technologies, a Calgary-based carbon utilization company and winner of the X Factor Award in the NRG COSIA Carbon X Prize. She also created and leads the company's consumer brand, OCO. In 2019, Madison graduated from the University of Calgary with a Bachelor of Commerce in Accounting and a BA in Sociology with an honors dissertation she did on the effect of water insecurity on First Nation reservations. During her time in university, she studied the University of Glasgow for 2 semesters, interned at the U.S. Peace Corps, and had cooperative education placements at the City of Calgary and ATCO. Madison spoke at the TEDx Youth at Victoria Park conference on the importance of maintaining hope during the climate crisis. She was the curator of Global Shapers Calgary during an elected 2021-2022 term. Global Shapers is an initiative of the World Economic Forum. Most recently, Madison was listed on the 2021 Corporate Knights Top 30 Under 30 list of sustainability leaders. Welcome, Madison.
Thanks so much for having me. I'll just go ahead and share my screen here. Awesome. Yeah, as was mentioned, my name is Madison Savlo. I'm Chief of Staff at Carbon Upcycling, and I lead our consumer products brand. I'll be speaking mostly about Carbon Upcycling's work today and what it means to be a part of the energy transition. You can see me here in the middle of this photo. We're standing in front of our carbon capture and utilization reactor here in Calgary, Alberta. This plant specifically is at a natural gas plant. This is actually the natural gas plant that serves half of Calgary's electricity, and we're taking the CO2 from the flue gas stack at that plant to create a bunch of different materials. So I'll dive right into that. Our vision as a company is to become the most impactful carbon tech company of this decade. Carbon tech is kind of the familial name of basically carbon capture and utilization. So our goal to be the most impactful is also kind of based on the fact that this is one of the last decades we can have impact on climate change mitigation, whether that's for the better or for the worse. So to do this, we're ushering in a new frontier of circular materials, mostly for the cement and concrete sector, but for other sectors as well. There's two large problems that we're addressing with our technology, and these actually speak to the ingredients that the technology requires. So the first ingredient is CO2, or gaseous CO2. This comes in the form of flue gas from a flue gas stack. You'll probably recognize some of these flue stacks from around Calgary or from driving kind of in industrial areas. This is actually the gas that we're able to capture to create valuable products. The second ingredient into our technology is an inorganic solid powder. And these powders usually are byproducts of large industrial processes like bolt fire plants or steel production. We also use a lot of natural minerals as well. So things like clay from the environment and that are more naturally found. So those are the two ingredients into our technology and two of the big issues that we're solving also with our platform technology. And this is how it works. So we have those two inputs, and here you can see a little bit of a snippet of the inside of our reactor system. So this is a single step, low energy carbon utilization technology where we combine that gaseous CO2 and the powder feedstocks to create valuable end products that go into many different sectors. You can see a little bit of a close-up here. That's supposed to be the particle of powder of that solid feedstock with the CO2 molecule that's being attached to the side of that for permanent sequestration and storage. So if you can imagine, we have a lot of CO2 in the atmosphere right now, much more than is actually needed and is causing things like climate change. So what we're doing is being able to reduce that and recapture that CO2 so that it can be stored permanently and safely in many different types of products. We did start the company in 2014. Our first little prototype was in 2015, but the first workable reactor was in 2016. So you'll see a picture of that here. We have a number of different reactors since then, and we've actually, in the last 8 years, scaled up over 10 million times. In the past 6 years, it's been a 1 million times scale up. So you can see our different reactors that are still all located here in Calgary. One of the first applications and uses of our technology is in the concrete sector. Concrete is the second most used substance on Earth other than water. So if you can imagine how much water usage there is, concrete is not far behind that. It also makes up about 8% of global emissions. So that's quite problematic because it's also very, very hard to decarbonize and reduce the carbon footprint of concrete. Even if we were to switch all of the fuel to renewable energy, still 2/3 of the emissions would remain from concrete and cement production just because of the way cement is created. Cement, for those that don't know, is the glue that holds all of the different ingredients of concrete together. So if you can imagine concrete as the cake, cement is like the eggs that stick the flour and the different pieces of different ingredients of this cake together. So really the biggest issue with the concrete sector is cement production and how that's created through a chemical and thermal reaction. It's also a massive industry. Like I mentioned, second most used substance other than water, but it's also growing rapidly. So when we talk about the built environment, we're talking about buildings and houses and skyscrapers, roads, things like that. We're actually about to see the built environment double in size by 2060. So this is massive market growth that we're seeing, and more concrete and cement will be needed to actually make this growth possible. Of course, that also means that there's a lot of emissions that come from that. Currently, like I mentioned, there's 8% of global emissions stemming from the concrete and cement sector alone. But if we're seeing such an increase and growth of that material use, it's only going to become more so unless we do something about it. There's also a lot of material scarcity. So the materials that are used to make cement and cement alternatives are becoming more and more rare. It's harder to get access to them. So what we're able to offer with our technology is more materials that can be used within the concrete sector. Right now, we're tapping into the supply chain at the point where cement is produced. So our technology is taking local waste materials like fly ash, which is a byproduct of coal incineration plants and is pretty locally available, even here in Alberta. We use lots of natural materials like clay, and we can even use things like crushed glass. So if you think of any glass bottles that you might use at home that you might recycle, that is actually something that we can crush up and then store CO2 into to create a concrete material. And this is something that we're able to then take to construction sites. So if you can imagine, maybe your future house is made of CO2 and crushed glass as a cement alternative, and your home could be something that's low carbon or even net negative in terms of its concrete use. To date, we have this large commercial reactor that we're able to process material at here in Calgary, and we sell all of that material to our partner at Burnco. Burnco is a concrete company, but you may recognize some of their big red logos around the city at projects that they're pouring concrete at, or you might even see some of their ready mix trucks. Those are our partners in the field. We've deployed about 1,400 tons of our product, our cement alternative or glue alternative, to that partner. And this has allowed us to store about 40 tons of CO2 in commercial projects, which has been really exciting. We've also displaced quite a large amount of cement from being used. About 120 tons of CO2 has been avoided just through the use of our material. And that was in 2021. We've been doing the same work here in 2022. This is one project that we did actually in Minnesota. So we've gone global. We've done some active pours in different regions here, but this is a highway actually. So if you're ever driving in Minnesota, there is potentially you're on a low carbon highway. This is us actually in Calgary. So these are called screw piles. They hold up the foundation of a building. That's our CEO. He's bent down to check the quality of the concrete and help with the pour. Of course, we wanted to be our own first customers. So we actually used our own material to pour the foundations of our new building, where we have our current reactor system. So this is our concrete holding up our new reactors to create more concrete. This is a project that you can see in and around Calgary. This is a triple sustainability project. So you'll see the blue wind turbine there on the top that spins. We have solar panels, and the whole base of that is actually made of low carbon concrete. This is a foundation for an eco home in Bragg Creek, just outside of Calgary. The walls on this were going to be made of hemp, which is an interesting low carbon material, but the base of this and the foundation of the home was made of our concrete, and our partner Burnco helped us with this one as well. This is another project you can find just outside of Calgary city limits. It's a greenhouse foundation. So we poured all of that concrete a couple summers ago, actually, and that one's been working out quite well. We have a number of other applications of our technology beyond the concrete sector. So we do want to become, like I mentioned, the most impactful carbon tech company of the decade. Advanced materials play a large piece in that, and that includes things like plastics and inks and dyes. So we've been doing a lot of different projects here. And in 2019, we actually started a consumer products brand. So you'll see a number of products that you might actually be able to purchase here one day, made from low carbon materials or materials derived from CO2 emissions. All of these are very functional in the way that they operate and create some sort of a performance benefit with them. For instance, a lot of the hard plastic that we're able to create is a lot stronger, in some cases up to 5 times stronger than conventional plastics. We also have a project in the agriculture sector. Some of our materials made from CO2 and from carbon, they're actually able to offer some benefit to soil. So there's lots of different things that we can do in advanced materials that are beyond the concrete and building sector. There are just a couple more photos. We've started to get into additive manufacturing as well. So that means 3D printing. That's kind of an interesting space where we're able to create filaments of our low carbon plastic, and then that can be used as a 3D printer. We're doing a lot of films, and then we're also getting into a lot of packaging. So if you think of the cosmetic sector or any bottles that you may have in your houses, most of those are going to be made of plastic in some way. So we're able to create a low carbon version of that. And then, as I mentioned, we recently launched a consumer products brand. So this is something you may find on your shelves pretty soon here. This includes anything you can imagine. So we've done a lot of work on plastic products, but also getting into things like textiles, some concrete products, rubber. We've done a lot of different really unique products, and even working with artists to get this off the ground. One of the really interesting things that we advocate for is getting more people into carbon tech and clean tech, and that means everyone. It's not just scientists, it's artists, it's business people, people with kind of social backgrounds. We really need everyone to be a part of the energy transition, and a large part of that is being able to kind of accept the viewpoint and perspectives of other people beyond just the technical folks. So this is kind of a good example of the different things that we've been able to do with our marketing and our materials just broadly. We have a number of different projects that are ongoing. So these are what's keeping us busy these days. We have a number of different products that are in product development phases, and hopefully you'll be able to purchase some of these soon from some of your favorite brands. Thank you so much for having me today. Yes, feel free to reach out anytime. I have my email there. I'm also on LinkedIn, but always happy to answer questions and whatnot about carbon tech and clean tech in general.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing your presentation. Yeah, if it's all right with you, I'd love to get into some questions.
Yeah, for sure.
Just as soon as we can get the screens.
Oh, I can stop sharing here.
Thank you. So I think my first question for you, just from the perspective of like high schoolers who may be interested in what you're doing, what kind of education prepared you, do you think, the most specifically for what you do now? And
Yeah, I think I was kind of touching on it briefly there, but all backgrounds are necessary in the energy transition. And I come from a background of accounting and sociology, but now I talk about nanotech and carbon tech on a regular basis. I also learned a little bit of trades. I learned how to weld just a bit during some of our scale up. So I think even less so than education, just a mindset of being open and being willing to try new skills, I think is really, really important to be successful in this industry.
Okay, very cool. That's very interesting just because of how like adaptable this industry seems to need to be as things change so much. And it seems like you have to be the same way as somebody who's working. My second question is, why is this work so important to you on a personal level, if you want to speak to that?
Yeah, for sure. For me, on a personal level, I am born and raised in Calgary, and I've always spent a lot of time in the mountains exploring, and environmentalism has always been really important to me. I've also grown up in a family that was in oil and gas, and I've seen a lot of the innovation and the efficiencies that come from oil and gas production. And I found it really interesting how entrepreneurialism plays into that. So I wanted to find a bridge between the two. So clean tech seemed like a perfect fit. I think we have a lot of incredible talent that's in Calgary and Alberta, and hopefully, youth and new generations can also see that opportunity in front of them and to play a role in the energy transition. But yeah, for me personally, I think it was really this mix of environmentalism and having a positive impact on improving the environment while also being able to allow innovation into my daily life.
That's very cool. My last question, I think, would be, what is your advice for young people who are growing up hearing about all the damage that we're doing to our planet and might be feeling a level of apathy or climate fatigue?
Yeah, I think we all feel it. I definitely feel it as well, especially being in climate tech all day, every day, and around these kind of conversations that are negative and scary, honestly. So eco-anxiety, I think, is what it's probably being called now, is really rampant. It's really common. I think that the best piece of advice I can give is, don't let apathy get to you. There's so much opportunity in this space to create really impactful I guess opportunities for the future and improving what we have currently. And I think that's something that it should be looked upon with positivity. We can't constantly be stuck in the negative, although obviously it is a very scary situation that we're in now. So I think just being pragmatic, and the other thing I would say too is make sure you're finding outlets for yourself to de-stress and to take care of your mental health. I have a really great support system around me of friends and family that I can go to, and really great hobbies as well that help me kind of maintain that anxiety that comes with being in this space. So those are the couple of pieces of advice that I would give.
Okay, thank you so much. I think that is all the questions I have, but we will forward your email, if that's all right, to the students receiving this presentation. And yeah. All right, everybody, that brings us to the end of our presentation. Thank you all so much for listening and hearing us. We would love any feedback. We will also send a survey to your teachers. Provided that we did a good job recording this meeting, it's going to be posted to our Learn Energy YouTube channel in the coming weeks. I'd like to give a special thank you to Madison and Isabella. What we want more than anything is to bring you all as many tools and resources as we can so that you all can move forward feeling equipped to take a role in your own futures and make the differences that you want to make. If any of you, students or teachers, want to send us that feedback, we'd be so grateful. We are constantly just working on making what we give you guys the best it can be. And that is it. Again, thank you all so much for joining us.